parts. I've never done whole parts.
Oh, they take little tiny pieces. There won't even be a scar.
I think I found the problem.
Oh, come on, you're the doctor.
Everyone, lights out and quiet.
Welcome, wayward film watchers, for the very first time into the Media Morgue, your one-stop shop for media news and reviews. I'm Justin Winley, alongside my fellow surgeons of cinema,
Daniel Mette,
Zack, Palomo,
Wes Goodrich.
Each episode, we collectively choose a popular movie to review before jumping into our scrubs and guiding you through the aisles of those films which are faded, foreign, or forgotten. Each of these second movies is selected by one of the hosts on rotation, and when we have guests, you too have the option of choosing the film we watch, but all in good time. Now, with the formalities out of the way, we have some news to get into.
Got some news.
There's a couple exciting developments that have come recently.
News.
Danny, I'll pass that to you. What are you going to go to first?
Just this morning we had an Obi-Wan Kenobi series announcement, the full cast. Hayden Christensen is just kind of barely clinging on. Star Wars is still his...
Star Wars is paying his light bill.
Well, that's what it would have to be, right? Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised. I'm curious about what his role would be if
flashbacks probably.
Yeah, but like if they announced
maybe just like shots of him sitting in rooms, like kind of scowling,
with the Vader mask next to him.
Yeah. Like, if they announced him so early, I'm like, what is it that you know what I mean? Like, I mean, I guess he was already at the conference, so they're not trying to keep him a surprise.
Mm-hmm. I remember people theorized that he would be in episode 9 because apparently he was like on set and he was like working out and stuff.
I thought he
he just came to the set to do push-ups in front of everyone.
I still got it.
It's sad he does this sometimes.
I thought for
Hayden, you are part of it. Yeah.
I thought for sure he was going to be the Han Solo bit from episode 9.
That would have made more sense.
My favorite favorite addition here is of course Benny Safdie.
Right.
Happy to see him get work. He's going to be in this and that Paul Thomas Anderson movie where he plays like a mayor or something.
I'm personally a big fan of O'Shea Jackson Jr., the Ice Cube's son. He is. I feel like
I see him.
I feel like that cast is just so unnecessarily stacked for an Obi-Wan Kenobi TV show.
Especially when I swore I wouldn't engage with any more Star Wars. Because they're literally doing a fucking droid show where it's like them rolling around in the desert and beeping and bopping.
Right.
The dialogue is like beep bop, I am a robot for like 2 minutes.
Zach, we were talking about Clone Wars, and I saw the Bad Batch on there. I saw a droid story.
Bad Batch.
And I came to you with kind of curiosity about what's going on with the Bad Batch. I saw them in one of the early episodes of the final season. I guess they're like a Expendables type of group of...
Yeah, they, their methods are different. Their whole shtick is like them and the regular clones just don't really like mesh. They're just they do things the quirky way. And it was kind of an obvious like, okay, we're gonna get a spinoff of these guys.
Right.
So I think they're great. Yeah. And again, I think what we can take away from Hayden Christensen being in the Obi-Wan series is just give him the coolness that he had in the Clone Wars. That's all I want. Erase his personality. Give him what we want. We want to see him being cool, and I think that's what they can do with the Obi-Wan series. Yeah.
Right.
I'd like to see him just his day-to-day life as a Jedi, the stuff we didn't see in a movie, like him leaving the bathroom and he has like a toilet paper on his boot and like Obi-Wan is like, Anakin,
there's some toilet paper on your boot. We can't go into battle with that.
He uses his lightsaber as a space heater because his apartment just gets a little bit too cold in the winter.
Well, yeah, the Clone War wouldn't pay the bills. He probably went to the VA afterwards and was like, hey, can I get whatever?
I hate the VA.
But I also, I guess part of what is exciting about this, the only thing, I mean, Ewan McGregor is carrying that whole prequel trilogy. Yes. I think, colloquially we agree on that.
Yes.
Also, they killed off Darth Maul too early, so we're more than likely going to see him in this. I mean, it's right, and I mean, he popped up in Rebels. I know they did like a...
He showed up in that Han Solo movie that no one saw.
Yes.
Also,
exactly
for virtual...
which was a complete setup for this. I'm going to take one of those pillows actually for some lumbar support.
There you go.
Get this lower back engaged.
We're all about posture on the media.
Well, because Darth Maul shows up in like that last arc of the Clone Wars series finale.
He's throughout the series though with his brother Savage Opress.
Yeah. Right, yeah. No, but I
love Star Wars names. Just complicated.
Yeah, no, I mean his finale in that is so good. Like that it has a scene that's equivalent to Darth Vader in Rogue One, just like slice and dicing everybody. Wow. So like watch it for that alone. It's amazing.
Will do, yeah. But yeah, I mean do we have a release date yet for
I don't think
Kenobi?
so. I think they're trying to do what Marvel is doing, and they're trying to have like Star Wars output about like every month moving forward. They announced like 12 shows.
I am kind of excited about the Ahsoka series because I think Rosario Dawson is really good.
She was a great
role.
choice.
Yeah. So I'll watch that. I'll watch Obi, and the rest can be burned.
The Book of Boba Fett.
Oh my god!
Get eaten alive with that.
That's happening. That's happening.
Does it start with him in the Sarlacc
It would have to
pit?
start with him in the pit and
He's
how
like
he
fighting.
He's like crawling
out of its teeth.
You know what the issue is? The last thing I'll say about this is I think Star Wars, and I love Star Wars. Star Wars suffers from this thing that has come with the internet, like the Redditing of these universes. Like I don't need to know how Boba Fett got out of the pit, but I know we're gonna see it.
Yeah.
I don't need to know how Han Solo got the gun. But
Dude,
we saw it.
The Solo movie is all that. It's just how many hats can we put on everything?
Right, he shows up at the fucking like naming center or whatever it is, and they're no last name, you're alone. Solo. I got an idea.
Yeah, it's everything, and then like him meeting Chewbacca.
Dice.
That's kind of long. I guess I'll call you Chewie.
You're gonna be my bear friend for the next few years.
Get it, everyone? Yeah, I don't need that. Or him getting the gun. It's stuff that like Han. The only real iconic thing about Han Solo is the Millennium Falcon, right? That's what you want. Like I don't care about how he got any of the other stuff.
And his digital dodging.
I was gonna say like the less said about the Han shot first thing, the better. But the first cut of that scene is so fucking badass. He's like, "Fuck you, Greedo." Shoots Greedo in the head, and Greedo's fucking head like explodes. They removed so much that made that scene like the best part of A New Hope, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's just like it's the watering down of the character. But that is happening. We also had the Suicide Squad.
The
trailer for the Suicide Squad, being directed by James Gunn. It's a soft reboot. They've kept Harley Quinn, Viola Davis, and Joel Kinnaman.
It's got all the stuff you like about James Gunn.
Oh yes, also Jai Courtney still has a.
Thank God they kept Jai Courtney.
They're like, we got to keep Captain Boomerang in here. He's integral.
Yeah. Now I'll be honest, and like don't fret, people who are listening. We'll get to the Snyder Cut eventually. But
is anyone fretting? Is anyone like?
I mean, some people might be tuning in, being like, "Hey, what? I want to hear Wes's thoughts about the Snyder Cut," which are many. But as far as the DCEU is concerned, in whatever state it's at right now, I think this looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
Starro is really what Starro the Conqueror.
We've got Pete Davidson. Is his character called the STD, or did I read that wrong?
I'm sorry?
Did I read that wrong?
His character is actually called Why Did Ariana Grande
I'm sorry. That could be a meme.
Actually,
I could be completely wrong, but I read that somewhere.
The STD.
It's got all the James Gunn stuff. It's got wrestlers as main characters, and his brother as a CGI guy walking around.
CGI, like
the little
Sean Gunn's always
Rooker.
a CGI.
It does.
Yeah.
Michael Rooker.
Yeah, that's him, right?
It's always
Gandhi,
good to see him
his
come
name.
back.
The strange thing about that, so I feel like the only corner of the DC universe that the DC is realizing is working consistently is Harley Quinn. So they're just building films around her, which
She's
is
just
fine.
Margot Robbie's doing what she's been doing since 2016. It is what it is.
She's like good at it. So like Birds of Prey is a controversial movie, or is
it?
I feel like a lot of people don't like Birds of Prey.
I found it annoying.
I wasn't a fan. I wasn't a huge fan of it. No.
Yeah, I found it annoying.
Wow, I'm alone here.
Sorry. I just
But that Harley Quinn animated show.
That is actually really good.
And I'm wondering what for me is the difference, because I know that the live action movie is like definitely trying to capture that.
Well, she's just kind of like a walking meme, I think, in that movie, whereas she has actual like depth and like cleverness to her in the show. I mean, is that too broad? I feel like I'm not saying enough specific stuff, but her motivation for a lot of the movie is like getting a bacon, egg, and cheese,
which is fine,
and that like propels her across.
Which can be your motivation.
20 minutes of story.
That's my motivation most mornings.
And in the show, it's like I'm in love with Poison Ivy. I want to actually be established in this city.
Joker, which is a thing in the. But obviously, it's hard to compare TV and film anyway because one is more stretched out, of course. But I think
DC's always excelled at their animated shows, and their live action movies have always kind of.
They and Marvel have been, I think, inverse in that sense.
Yeah. Even though I think Shazam's not bad either in terms of the DC.
Yeah, it's okay.
But back to Suicide Squad.
Yes.
I think one of the more interesting parts of that trailer for me was the inclusion of Idris Elba as Bloodsport, who is not Deadshot, even though he's clearly written in the original script to be Deadshot because he has a daughter, and he is good at shooting things, and he's wisecracking. Like, it was clearly meant to be
They
Deadshot.
Want to leave the door open for Will Smith to eventually come back.
And Will Smith is going to keep that door closed.
He is.
with his foot.
I'm surprised he's the only actor that didn't want to come back. I would never want to be in another Suicide Squad movie.
I think it's like, well, first of all, he's very expensive.
He's very wealthy.
And I guess
Jai Courtney doesn't have that much going on.
And
just kind of sitting around.
And in a way that and we were
DC.
texting about this, like Idris has not been able to catch a franchise as long as he's been working in this industry, and as good as he looks and as great of an actor as he is, he just can't latch on and really know what it is. I mean, he did The Wire.
Because they don't know what to do with dark-skinned black actors.
Well, yeah, that is what it is.
He was really only a bit player in those Thor movies, which is weird because he's supposed to be a huge part of that lore.
Heimdall is a massive, which is why people were getting so upset when he was cast. Like,
I remember there was a story where there was some story where he, was in an interview and he was like, I'm actually playing characters sometimes, and other times I'm just like in garb in front of a green screen on like a Marvel set, and it was like kind of controversial, but it shouldn't have been because it was really funny and it was also true.
Telling his truth, yeah. I mean, they stuck him in golden spandex for 2 movies, and then they killed him.
Says a couple things stoically.
He's good in Ragnarok. There's clear some care put into him in Ragnarok.
Well, because he's on the run in that, right? And so he actually has stuff to do. He's getting that.
He has like he has cool moments in all the movies, like even in the Dark World where he's like taking down that ship, and then he realizes.
But doesn't he get frozen?
I'm so sorry. I don't remember anything about that.
What'd you say, Zach?
Was it he gets frozen in the first movie, right? Like he tries to take like one swing and he gets like knocked out for the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
Does Loki freeze him? Is that what happens?
Yes, with the which is actually kind of a cool moment because like he knows what's going on, and then he gets right.
I believe you.
Do you think at some point Marvel's going to answer for their crime of making the only black person in that movie a doorman, or no? Do you think they're just going to be like, it's fine? It's okay. He's a cosmic doorman. It's fine.
Well, yeah, that's kind of the thing that's the trap that you can fall into when you want to race bend a character.
Oh yeah.
Is that like if you change someone who was, let's say, white into a black character, then like if that character is not actually that key, then it's like, oh, you just found a new way to disrespect me. But yeah. Well, I the most exciting part of the Suicide Squad trailer was King Shark for me.
Ripping the guy in half.
Starro.
Wow.
You're right. Starro, and then King Shark. I didn't even realize that it was Stallone until after.
No, because he's doing the Vin Diesel as Groot thing, where he shows up for half an hour and like moans into a microphone, and they give him a big fat paycheck. It's me, a shark. Where's the ocean?
Yes, that is your hand. So that's coming out in August. I'm sure we'll circle back around to talking about it in full. The final bit of news you want to talk about them.
Let's talk about this fucking trailer for them.
Have you seen
I
this,
gotta
Zach?
preface this.
The what?
Them.
No.
It's like
did I miss the homework assignment?
No.
No. But
have you seen Us, Zach?
Yes.
That's all you need.
All right, so it's the same thing.
So these people are basically just what's her name? Lena Waithe. Is that correct? Yeah. So it steals the aesthetic from like Jordan Peele's Us, like the cursive title and even the posters are like really similar. And then the story is like lifted directly from Get Out, but it's prolonged over
And
like
with
8
more people.
hours
And
because it's like a
Lovecraft
long
Country.
series.
Yeah, basically, Zach, to fill you and the audience in, this is a new Amazon original series that I got to see the first episode of because I got this free
Oh,
pass
really?
to South
Did you
by
like it?
Southwest.
Okay.
That's where it was. Not very much.
right.
Is there
Basically,
anything redeeming?
I mean, it looks nice and it's got good actors.
The main thing for me is like, who is this for? Because this seems like it would be like torture to watch. It's like this
basically
black
this,
family
this-
being tortured
This
by
black family moves into a white neighborhood,
Yeah.
and the white people don't want them there.
and there's like a minstrel imagery.
But here's
and-
the thing about, I mean, we've talked about this before, but I think in the post Get Out world, studios don't realize why Jordan Peele works, which is like using horror as a vehicle to expose like different issues in with like class and racism. But it's not just the white devil. Like it's never just as simple as white people are evil. It's always like white people are doing this or class does this. You know what I
Right.
mean? But like with
Get
shows,
Out can definitely be like a class allegory
Exactly.
for sure.
And, but I think the lesson studios have taken from this is like, oh, white people are evil, and we can make those horror movies.
We like things that
Right.
are this extreme because it gets people talking.
and it
that's why
just
was
it just feels. I mean, I haven't seen the show. I don't want to.
no. I would like for it to be more than what it seems to be, but
Yeah, a neighborhood being a sundown town as a horror idea with nothing attached to it. It's just white people are evil. Doesn't feel horrific. And we'll get into this in this conversation.
and horror to me still has stuff that's supposed to be like kind of fun and not just torturous. Like I'm watching this trailer. Like, is this like every episode is like them being tortured by this white neighbor? Like, this just seems awful.
It's because it's. I mean, we'll get into this later, but I think it's part of the elevated horror trend that I think actually subverts what horror, the purpose of horror in American culture. You know?
We're seeing the downsides of that. trend.
Well, I mean, if
I thought there was a remake of that crazy bug movie from the 50s. There's this movie from the 50s called Them where these fucking ants or like creepy cockroaches, whatever it is, they like attack a bridge. I thought it was a remake of that. I was like, why are people fucking talking about this? It's just a big creature feature remake.
Well, now that you've
But
mentioned
now I
that,
know,
maybe
yeah.
it needs to get done. But if y'all don't have any further thoughts about them, we can actually get into our popular pick.
Let's get into Saint Maud.
Saint Maud.
Saint Maud.
The A24 that could.
Directed by Rose Glass and released in America in 2021. It came out overseas in 2019.
Yeah.
So major spoiler alert, obviously, for both of these movies that we're going to discuss today.
Who saw that happy ending coming?
Whoa.
Jesus comes in and congratulates her on being an epic Fortnite gamer. I did not see that coming. Okay, no, but really, we'll ruin the movie for you. So come back if you haven't watched it yet, or just skip ahead.
We'll
I mean,
give
if
we
you
can
don't care about
give
Saint
we can
Maud.
give initial thoughts, general thoughts, non-spoilery. If you just
Yeah.
want like our like our mini letterbox review of it.
Oh, those are coming.
Yeah, but
Should I give the synopsis?
Yeah, let's do the long line. Let's let Dan
the
do that long
synopsis.
line.
So Saint Maud is about a young woman with an enigmatic yet clearly traumatic past who becomes an at-home nurse for a spooky retired bisexual, which is my favorite character archetype. And once she becomes convinced that her patient's part of God's greater plan for her, wacky hijinks ensue.
Okay.
There we are. So yeah, Zach, what'd you think of the movie, man?
Yeah, so my relationship with horror is complicated because I'm very fascinated with horror, but I'm also terrified of it. So I watched this movie with a pillow on my chest, just like in preparation to run away and hide. I loved it though. I mean, I thought it was amazing. It's not even an hour and a half long.
Right.
It's just like
Really
a
tight, cohesive story.
Yeah, it's just like an effective, short story, and it really like subverted all of my expectations in terms of who Maud is. I just like assumed from watching the trailer, I was like, okay, she's this type of person. She grew up this way, and I mean the imagery is beautiful. I mean like just like the shadow, the use of shadows, and noticing
That
that
scene
like
of her
everything
walking
is,
on the beach and like the lights
Yeah.
from the town reflecting over the water.
Yeah, and like that Coney Island, like her passing by that
Oh, when
Coney
she's
Island sign,
levitating
like-
and the fireworks are going off. Oh my god.
Yeah. So I mean, I loved it, and I just I went into a lot of research after I watched it, as you guys know. So I learning about how this film was made and what Rose Glass's like thoughts are on it. She goes into really specifically what the movie's about and what's literal and what's not. So we can get into that later. But yeah, I mean, I really liked it. I thought it was really great and haunting.
Yeah. Dan?
Well, or are we just giving kind of our general what we?
Yeah, and then what I'm gonna do after is like go through the plot summary basically,
Okay,
and we can
great.
stop and talk about.
Yeah, I think like Zack said, it's really cohesive, just very tight, and it doesn't really waste a moment. I mean, we're getting in her head. We're seeing the kind of anxious yet she's convinced of her higher purpose and convinced that these feelings she's having are natural and that she is a saint, and it communicates that really well. You're always thinking like, is this really happening or is it not? And at the end, it kind of answers those questions. So I think for the movie that it is, it's pretty much as good as it could have been. I don't have many criticisms of it because the story that Rose Glass is telling is pretty succinctly done here.
Yes.
I don't think there's much room for improvement.
Agreed. Wes?
So I wasn't as hot on it as you guys. I think it's visually very well done. I'm gonna be the hater on this podcast, guys.
all good.
You just got it is who I am. But no, I think visually it's really cool. I think there's a lot of you guys mentioned it. There's a lot of great stuff done visually. I think, especially in terms of how it's. I have a theory that I'm sure it didn't come from me, come from a bunch of other smarter people, but like that all filmmaking is sampling. The way rapping,
right?
You're just taking older stuff and laying it over and reappropriating it,
right?
And the way that this kind of reappropriates and samples like stuff like The Exorcism and The Omen visually, I think is really dope. I think.
I was also
they definitely carry over similar themes, but I think all things considered, this one's pretty original.
I was also thinking of, and I'm just saying this because I know you love this movie. It also reminded me a lot of The Passion of Joan of Arc.
It did. Which I think all religious horror is indebted to Passion of Joan of Arc in some kind of way, because that is a pro horror movie. I think it is. But I think. Where I falter with a lot of elevated horror movies, which is I'm sure a term we're going to be using a lot today, is I think the story actually doesn't explode the ideas that it's trying to wrestle with, right? Like it's wrestling with like religious fanaticism in a way that's interesting, but then it doesn't ever go any deeper than that's pretty kooky, huh? You know what I mean? At least in my opinion. And I wish for as good as the performances are and as good as the visual language of the thing is, the story had delivered, at least for me, in a way I don't think it did.
I want to counter that one point because I do think it shows that, it goes deeper than her just being like a wacky, crazy lady. Like she is doing damage to herself and others.
Right. Yeah, it is very much about her mental illness. And before we get into the plot summary, I'll just say that like, I enjoyed it. I have a bad habit when I'm watching movies of like not sitting and watching it all the way through. So like I pause and walk away.
That's how I am now. I used to not be that way at all.
Yeah,
but
and
like
it's
with Black Narcissus, for example, I'd split it up into two sittings.
Yeah, that's part of what it is. You get antsy, but I think it's paced pretty well. Despite my distractions, I think it has really strong performances. And you know what, Zach, to your point, I don't know if I would have minded it being even a little longer. I mean, not like necessarily going on 2 hours, but I think to Wes's point, maybe there's some more, and it's an independent movie, small budget. Not that many people.
I think what may have hurt the film as a whole is probably its marketing, because I see what you're saying about it. Maybe it could have been a bit longer. They could put in more horror stuff, but I'm watching it and it's like, I think the genre classification is really just to sell the film because it seems more preoccupied with being
because
a character study.
It was marketed as this movie about a religious fanatic.
Yeah,
which but
I expected something totally different when I sat down and watched it.
It's really more about just this woman, like she does like this. This lonely woman who has nobody to help her.
What I would actually say is it's marketed as an A24 horror movie, which I think is a specific brand that we can talk about because I think A24 has carved out a brand of horror that is when you see Hereditary, when you see Midsommar, when you see The Witch, you're like, oh, that's A24 horror.
And now everyone's trying in the independent field is trying to do that in the chance of getting picked up by A24.
Just like Blumhouse has a horror aesthetic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm sorry, Justin.
No, that's actually a really good point. And I think we can jump into the plot summary now. So, yes, as Danny's early synopsis said, this is about a nurse. Her actual name is Katie. Do we ever learn why she goes by Maud?
Well, we don't even know specifically what happened when she was working at that hospital.
Right.
We just see like a bed full of, a bed with like a body, right? And a bunch of roaches, guiding her.
I read up on Rose Glass literally goes into like all of that. She goes into like the name. She goes into we're going into full
open the floodgates, brother.
Fuck it.
I'm nervous about it. So
if you're still listening and you want to watch the movie, that's on you.
So you see like she's giving CPR and then she breaks through the chest cavity, right? Like so that's based on a real story. Rose Glass, like I think one of her friends or someone, I might be butchering this story, but she knows someone who is a nurse who that happened to. She was trying to give CPR and they had just had a surgery on their chest. So she broke through. And so she asked her if she could actually use that story. So that's pretty much what happened.
Wow.
Yeah. And in terms of her choosing the name Maud, so Rose Glass, I mean, this is more of a filmmaking. This isn't like exactly what Kate's motivation was. But it's a plain name, but and I forgot the rest of it. It's a plain name.
It sounds like something that could.
Yeah, no, well, yeah. So I mean, this girl Katie / Maud, we'll call her both interchangeably. She comes into town. She's a nurse for a private nursing company, and she has this checkered past with her patients before. And one of the things that stuck out to me immediately was like how personable the movie is. Like I didn't expect monologue at all. And so immediately it was like definitely trying to endear you to her, I think, a bit through her prayers and her conversations.
And it gets you to care about her in a way I think is very effective because later on when she's like trying to make friends at the bar, that scene to me is like more anxiety inducing than like stuff that the Safdies have committed to film. Because like seeing her like sit across from that group of friends and like laugh at like weird times and like try and like assimilate into their friend group. It's like someone who has like social anxiety, that's like, oh shit, like they're gonna think you're weird. Stop. That's not when you laugh. That's not when you act like that. And then her going to the bathroom and calling someone she hasn't seen in like a long time and trying to get drinks and stuff. That gave me so much. It gave me social anxiety, which is different from like a bank robbery in a movie.
No, for sure. You know what? Let me read the paragraphs. I'm on Wikipedia now. Shout out Wikipedia. Got me through high school and also college. So yes, a nurse named Katie fails to save the life of a patient in her care despite attempting CPR. Time passes and Katie, now referring to herself as Maud, has become a devout Roman Catholic and is working as a private palliative care nurse in an unnamed English seaside town. She's assigned to care for Amanda, a dancer and choreographer from the U.S. who's terminally ill with stage 4 lymphoma and confined to a wheelchair. Amanda is embittered by her fate and confesses to Maud that she fears the oblivion of death, at which point Maud comes to believe that God has tasked her with saving the atheist Amanda's soul. Maud reveals to Amanda that she sometimes feels God's presence tangibly and appears to be overcome with ecstasy as they pray together, something that Amanda seems to experience as well. So yeah, let's pause and talk about the orgasms because
wow, that's why I came on this podcast.
The Godgasms.
The first one happens as she's climbing up the stairs,
climbing up the wall. She's like.
Actually, it might even be before. I'm thinking of like when she first kind of lays down. Actually, this moment that the poster is that the shot is taken from, which
I thought she was like clawing her eyes out in that scene.
Well, it's crazy because they keep doing this thing like, and it's funny we mentioned the Safdie brothers because I remember you put me on to how they use CGI to shrink Adam Sandler's eyes
to make him look possessed.
Yeah, like a creepy.
Josh Safdie's reason.
Yeah, similarly, I think they're messing with Maud's eyes in this because there are times when she pulls at the sides and they like
and it balloons.
Yeah, it's like
someone's face was like going crazy with CGI during the bar scene that I was talking about a couple seconds ago. Yeah, I noticed like weird stuff like that.
Yeah,
a lot of A24 horror. I don't know if they pick up these movies and then they do stuff. Like more post-production stuff before they release it to masses. Because Midsommar has shit like that.
Midsommar has stuff like that. Climax has stuff like that, which I know was an outsourced thing they bought. So I don't know. I wonder if it's just an aesthetic choice that they gravitate towards.
Maybe. Yeah, but this I didn't really catch it as like it took me reading an article afterward to realize, oh, it's supposed to be like an orgasmic experience, like this ecstasy that she's experiencing. And then that's also supposed to, I guess, cast doubt on whether or not this is actually faith or if it's something more schizophrenic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's
definitely schizophrenic undertones.
Yeah.
Just like how she acts in general.
right. But then it's also strange that, like, I don't know, Zach, if Rose Glass talked about this, but when she is praying with Amanda on the couch, they do both have that, like, moment of
was another
ecstasy.
thing
So,
that
like,
gave me
is that
anxiety.
real or is that, like, Maud's imagination, is something to think about.
Because it's like, is she making fun of her? Is she taking it
Yeah, I mean, she
seriously?
has, well, because there's also that moment that where she goes to, like, touch her hand, and it, like, cuts, I think, just before they actually make contact. But yeah, I'm pretty sure, like, right before Amanda goes, like, demonic, I think she, like, confesses that was fake, right? Like, that was her just
That's
doing
probably
that,
the best
right?
scene in the movie.
Yes.
It's a weird scene.
That scene.
By the end, and we'll get there. So all right, well, yeah. So Maud is having these experiences. Maud becomes suspicious of Amanda's companion Carol, who visits the house regularly and whom Amanda pays for sex. While in town one evening, a former work colleague called Joy recognizes Maud and gives her phone number.
I love
in case she
reading off
needs
the
company.
wiki. That's so great. Just reading the Wikipedia.
Maud later takes Carol aside and implores her to stop visiting as she believes Amanda's soul is in jeopardy. Carol feigns agreement but later comes to Amanda's birthday party. And in front of Maud, Amanda informs the partygoers that Maud tried to drive Carol away and mocks her for trying to save her soul. Really intense scene.
That's the scene that
Another
really
social
messes me up.
anxiety.
As someone with social anxiety. Like,
Yeah.
the idea of all
Just the
eyes
room
being
full of people,
on you at a
judging
party,
and laughing at
not
her.
feeling it.
Yeah.
It's not my thing.
Yeah,
She
no.
walks over and slaps that bitch. That was awesome. That was a meaty slap too. You could fucking hear that.
Yeah,
Slap
yeah.
that goes a bit.
What's interesting about this segment is, Justin, I know you did too. I don't know about Zach or Dan, but I grew up in a very Christian household, and there's a concept in Christianity, some evangelical circles called like the flesh and the spirit, right? Like, and the idea is like the flesh is like sex and like all this stuff that is like you in and of yourself is sinful, and then there's like this spirit, and like this movie seems very interested in those ideas, especially like Maud is trying to purge
Her flesh.
her flesh out of herself, but also out of everyone around her.
Yeah.
In an interesting way. And I like, that's the thing I really locked into, because I was like, oh, that's a real psychological thing.
Yeah.
That even if you're not struggling with mental illness, if you grow up in a Christian household, that's something that you're struggling with all the time.
Yeah.
You're like, am I in my flesh right now? Right now, am I in my flesh? You know what I mean?
And it's not even just lust in the, obviously you talked about the sexual context, but it's just any human desire that's like hedonistic, aside from like food, water, like drink, like the basic essentials. When you start getting into excess, that's where flesh is involved. And there's this idea of a constant war because the spirit is like the all spark.
The all
God
spark.
gave to humanity. So stick the cube into my chest, Sam.
Stick the cube in my chest.
Kill me, Sam. Kill me. I've lived 1,000 years.
Do you guys remember the animated movie when Optimus Prime dies and he like transforms into a coffin? Do you remember that part?
No, I never saw it.
Yeah, it's awesome.
You just unlocked a memory of that first Transformers movie where
Oh my
like
God.
literally as a kid you're like, is he gonna kill Optimus Prime right now?
It's kind of devastating.
Yeah, just Optimus Prime turning into his own hearse and driving himself.
It's like, please kill me.
No, God is not
wacky
Optimus Prime.
That we know.
That we know. So believing that God has rejected her, Maud visits a pub to find companionship, but is rejected by most of the people she meets. And this is what we were just talking about. This scene is really rough. There's also, before she meets the guy that she goes home with,
Did they go home or they? Oh, okay. So I thought they were just like having sex somewhere in the bar.
Yeah, no. The first guy, she just gives a little, wax on, wax off in the bathroom and then leaves.
Yeah. Stone-faced.
Stone-faced.
Just staring him down.
And then he goes and like talks to his friends. He's like, let's get out of here.
He has clarity.
Right.
He had the clarity.
Yeah, post-nut clarity. Yeah, it's this weird
Just like
thing.
creeped out by this girl who's jacking.
It's this weird thing where, again, this is Rose Glass kind of like messing with you because it's the typical moment in a regular movie where the girl goes into the bar and she's looking at the guy and then they go have like crazy bar sex. Like there's like a scene in Jessica Jones where that happens. And like any movie where there's a bar and a woman's in a bar. But in this, it's, very emotionally detached. She's just doing it because she thinks that's what she's supposed to be doing. And I guess it's also the moment where, like, again, that flesh is coming out because we also do get a moment We see her like get fired, disbarred, so to speak, from the nurse community. And then eventually she winds up at this bar. She meets this guy.
You know what? Oh, sorry. No, I was just gonna. I think that's what I was talking about, though. Like, I was surprised by that scene because that's the insight to the person she was before, she took on faith.
Yes.
And, like, up until that moment, I was like, she probably...
Yeah.
What?
The guy knew her. He's like, I remember you from so-and-so.
Yeah.
Like, you were weird.
Exactly. And they, when she's talking to Amanda's like, oh, so this is a recent conversion, and it's like, she doesn't, just because of how devoted she is, I assumed she had grown up in a Christian household. She had been practicing this for a while. So with that conversation and then this bar scene, you're like, oh, this is not the person that you thought you entered this movie with.
Right.
Which, which was great.
And then they go home and they're having sex, and there is that moment where she flashes back to crushing that dude's chest. And then she gets off him. He's like, you okay? But then he gets back on top of her, even though she doesn't want to. And
this movie doesn't have very many scares, but that's a scare that really works. The chest breaking, I was like, oh my God,
absolutely.
It really surprised me.
Absolutely. As far as like jump scares, right? Because there are moments that are like when she is like pulling at her face that are unsettling. But as far as jumps, then there's this really fantastic shot when she's walking home. That perpendicular
the stairwell, right?
Dude,
Yeah.
And as she's walking down to get into her apartment, and this is where
the levitation
happens.
Levitate.
She also vomits.
Oh yeah.
Projectile vomit.
Yeah.
Which
she does. Yeah.
I don't know if I ever really need to see puke in a movie.
Yeah, it's
if you need to see it, like you don't like puke.
it's one of the three things in a movie that'll ruin my day.
What's the other two?
It's
racism.
No, racism. I actually
racism.
I don't know if you guys know this. I love racism. No. Usually, suicide messes me up in a movie. Vomit and then like finger stuff, like when someone cuts off a finger or something, messes me up.
Fingernails, dude. And Zack.
I remember. I saw this documentary about the making of the Silence of the Lambs, and they were talking about how no one really reacts to like hands and like legs getting cut off in movies, but when you do shit like teeth pulling and like fingernails getting taken, that actually it also feels like something that could just happen to you at any time. You feel like you could fall over like going down the stairs and like lose a tooth, know? Or, like,
it's easier to separate like who's going to come up to me with a machete and lop
right. And if you lop off your arm, like you feel like Anakin Skywalker. So. Okay,
that's what it is.
Like watching Hellraiser, this could never happen to me. A bunch of chains coming out of nowhere and like
exactly. But yeah, and I was joking around with Zack. I was like, there's a limit to, and this goes for any of you. I've told many of my close friends, listen, if somebody comes looking for you and you've been living a life that I don't know about, and they're like, where is this person? I'll take a few blows, a few punches, you know what I mean? I'll take some, even maybe a few cuts. If they bring out some pliers,
what was his secret
it's
life?
over. It's over. I'm singing.
Put the timer down next to you when you're tied to a chair. Yeah. What happens when this timer hits zero? I better start talking.
To do with that, last known address, nicknames, all that.
Wow.
PlayStation IDs. And I think it's
oh, you motherfucker.
Because
you know my ID is just Danny Mette. You piece of shit.
But you know what, Zack, you've watched Ozark. If
If
they start pointing at my
toenails, they put you in a car.
It's over. You can have whatever you need. You can have my family.
I don't have that much loyalty.
But yes, vomiting is one of the things that messes me up. And she projectile vomits
back to vomiting
all over the table.
Yes.
And this is the part of the movie where I think it's working on a visual level, which is it's starting to become an impressionistic thing where we don't actually know what's reality and what's not. It doesn't matter. Because it's all real to her.
That's a staple of elevated horror.
Yeah.
But this one does eventually tell us that it was all in her head.
Yeah.
It's just like kind of brilliant, actually. Just like a very brief, like less than 2 seconds, her burning alive there at the end.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
It just kind of answers all your questions.
Yeah, obviously, so I think she starts praying in this scene, and then she does start to levitate into the air. It's this really nice shot, exorcist type, shot where she's, it's not like the whole bent in half thing, and then there's fireworks going off in the background.
Beautiful shot.
So fantastic. While out walking, she encounters Amanda's new nurse, and interrogates her for information before storming off when she realizes that her replacement enjoys a good relationship with Amanda.
That scene did something interesting.
I thought that woman was dead.
Oh,
Needle in the neck.
Because we spend the whole movie in Maud's head, like we're willing to, when she meets this new nurse, like hate the nurse, like for Maud, because it's like we're so empathetic towards Maud. It's like, yeah, if she hates this nurse, like we will too. But then the nurse is like just a regular person who's trying to get by, and it's like, oh shit, like Maud, you're way in the wrong.
Yeah.
It's definitely like a tug of war at who are you rooting for?
Absolutely.
Is she wearing? Does she have the nails in her feet during that scene?
Yeah, she's walking around with the nails in her feet. It's easy to forget about that. Yeah. They didn't have like puddles coming
That's
out.
what they sold the movie on. Was that nail shot?
I told Zack, this is what I saw in the trailer. I was like, gotta see the movie now.
Yeah, that's all I had to say.
Yeah. Oh God, it's brutal too, because like they cut it in the trailer,
her, like cringing
where
and
it's like,
stuff.
she does that, and then she's like,
They cut it right as her foot's about to come down. Like
but
a
in the
frame
movie,
before.
she straight up stands. She puts like.
She's walking around for a few
those like
scenes
gels
now.
that you put, like insoles that you put in your shoes if like you have like calluses on your feet.
Yeah.
She does one of those, but it has nails.
I thought you were talking about one of those shoe inserts that like make you 2 inches taller.
Or one, like something like that, but it's got
Tom
nails
Cruise
in it.
inserts.
And she stands up into the shoes and she screams, and then it cuts to her walking down the boardwalk. Yeah, to go meet the other nurse. Punishing herself, I guess.
I definitely forgot about the nails on the feet.
Yeah, for whatever. But she leaves the nurse alone in her apartment. She begs for a sign from God. And then this is where we have that, like, the witch, straight up the witch. This is why, like, where she talks to
What's
God.
that like to live deliciously?
Yeah. And you don't see...
We have the Prince of Egypt cribbing here
As well.
when God speaks to her in her voice. Guys, we need to respect the Prince of Egypt.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So what Zack found out, and what we were talking about before we started recording, is that in this part, Morfydd Clark, who plays Maud / Katie, is conversing with who she believes to be God, and that voice is her own voice in Celtic,
in Welsh.
Welsh.
I was willing to believe that it was like ancient Sumerian.
I thought it was Sumerian. Yeah,
Me too.
It felt creepy and ancient.
Yeah, I thought it was.
Would have
too.
worked because at this point I'm still in the movie like, okay, is it going to she's been talking to Satan the whole time and doesn't know it?
Oh, that's what I thought
That's
too.
where like, and then I was really like, this is just the witch, because I mean, again, like
I want to talk about that we'll get back to this, but I want to talk about how the ending really answers the questions, because it's like maybe it would have been better if it was ambiguous whether or not she was talking to God or Satan or she was just crazy.
Let's put a pin in that, because I also have thoughts about the ending in that.
Yeah.
In that
Yeah.
thing.
I'm reason like, for example, Danny had corrected me, again, and said, like, A24 is a distributor, like they don't make the films.
Sometimes they do.
Yes, but like
People know what to do to get A24.
And I'm looking at this like, wow, and not only the scene itself, but the way Morfydd Clark, the way Morfydd Clark
shot.
looks like Anya Taylor-Joy, kind of like, a little bit bare, without clothes, long hair, similar features. So like, and she's talking to the camera. So she has this conversation with God. I don't remember what all gets said.
You're so close to my will.
Yeah, a lot of ambiguous stuff.
The one that got me was just the way it says mom, dad. It's like mom, dad. It was that got me.
Yeah, that when it switches to English, that's always strange.
Yeah,
it's the
not
same thing that
good.
happens in Parasite.
Yeah.
Where the mother
That's so
starts-
interesting in Parasite, how they'll just like kind of fashionably say sentences in English and then go back to Korean.
Yeah, in the creepiest way.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I think the mother says, like, is that all right with you? Or something.
Is it okay with you?
Love that movie. But anyway.
Great film.
Great flick.
Yeah, there's also this thing that happens throughout the movie where Maud sees spirals in liquid. She sees
Tornadoes.
Yeah.
little
Kind of like an
whirlpools.
Uzumaki.
Right.
tattoo.
So yeah, she's talking to God. He says, tell her. Yeah, he tells her to be ready for an act that will demonstrate her faith. Joy, her friend from earlier, visits and apologizes for reacting badly to the phone call that Maud made to her while she was in the bar, asking her to come out. During her visit, Maud interprets a rolling cloud formation as the sign from God and blesses Joy, who leaves for work. I also thought Joy was going to die in this scene. She's in her house. I was like, needle in the neck again. Like that's what
I was hiding in my pillow at that scene. I thought she was just gonna bash her head
But
against the
it
cabinet.
differentiates itself from something like Vomit, Joker, where he's just like going into killing spree. Because it has a very similar scene where like the guys come up to check on him and he stabs those guys. That movie sucks.
But
But this, Saint Maud is much more purposeful. Like, why would she kill that lady? It's our natural, like kind of
movie impulse,
right? That she would just go on a killing spree because we've seen all these people going crazy movies,
right.
But the thing, Dan, I actually think, and we're going to get to this more at the end, I think this movie is much more in conversation with like Taxi Driver and First Reformed and those like 70s Schrader movies than horror movies, because the narration, the slow transformation, the slow interiority,
the way that you start to believe their world,
and even the beats. The back end has all the beats that Taxi Driver and First Reformed have. And then Joker rips off and does terribly.
Well, what's weird though is that like
obscures
Joker
the
is
whole
already so derivative of Scorsese's work, but it doesn't do the narration. It's like
very strange.
Why not just go all the way with it? Because listen, I don't want to go into too much of a detour. I'll just say this because I was talking.
We
to my
could
dad
shit
about
on
it.
Joker for 4 hours.
We could. That'll be for the paywall.
Yeah.
But basically, I was saying to my dad, because we were having a conversation about like serial killers and stuff, and I was like, Todd Phillips apparently wanted this to be like this idea of, okay, be careful who you treat poorly because you don't know if people have like mental illnesses, and like you assume that like it's like we're all afraid of like the weird person, right? Because we think they're going to do something dangerous, but then he does. Like,
so you were right to assume you were correct.
He becomes the Joker.
He literally becomes a mass
correct.
murderer and incites a riot. So it's like, what do you actually say?
That movie is more in conversation with Birth of a Nation than anything else. But anyway, we can that'll be the paywall episode.
Yeah.
Just be afraid of the mental illness. You're correct.
Yeah, it's crazy. So that same night, Maud dresses herself up in she basically rips the sheets off her bed, and she to look like she's wearing a nun's outfit, and finds a rosary bead, and she waits outside Amanda's house and enters after the care nurse leaves. She finds Amanda in bed, extremely weak. She's kind of nearing the end. Amanda asks forgiveness for mocking her faith, and Maud joyously reminds her of the time they experienced God's presence. Amanda reveals that she feigned the experience and states that God is not real. Maud recoils in horror as a now distorted and demonic Amanda hurls her across the room and mocks her for needing to prove her faith. In a frenzy, Maud viciously stabs Amanda to death. Now,
there were a few genre classifications I was thinking, like I accepted like the trailers are probably misleading, but once that happened, I was like, okay, it is horror.
Right.
It is scary.
When the turn that I wasn't sure about is like, because I think straight up when Amanda turned into a demon, I think that was Maud's illness coming to the front, right? But because there's not like the movie isn't really about the supernatural.
No, it's a horror film about mental illness,
right? But when she says I faked it, that's what I'm not sure if Amanda said I faked it or if that's her thinking that Amanda.
I think the illusion comes in once she says that, because that kind of breaks the barrier in her mind of like seeing Amanda as a human being who needs help.
Right.
At that point, it's like no, only Satan would say this.
Would
her
lie to
mind
me like
projects
that.
her as like a monster at that point.
Right. Yeah, because there's a moment where Maud starts to cry, and I think that's her moment of clarity, right? Like that's the first time she's really like, I think, impacted by how far she's gone with her faith, and she starts to feel like despair, like maybe this isn't what I thought it was, maybe it's not real. And then I think her brain protects itself by all of a sudden conjuring the illusion that Amanda is Satan, and then hurls her across the room.
And I think also along with that, Zach, I think it goes along with this theme in the movie that's like, the only way to purify yourself is via pain and via like and via like these demonic encounters. And I think for her, she's like, oh, this is my final test, is destroying Satan, who is this woman in this bed who's dying. You know what I mean? And that's interesting. Like that's an interesting thing that's happening.
Definitely. How the mentally ill will always justify their actions with some greater purpose.
But even I think Zach, I don't know if you found this. I read literally one article about this, nothing else. Rose Glass talks about it not even being about mental illness, but also being about the idea that like 1,000 years ago, if you said God spoke to me, everyone would be like, oh my gosh, like amazing. tell us what he said. And like, if you said that today, people would be like, what are you talking about?
What the fuck?
Go somewhere else. You know what I mean?
Depart from
I read the exact same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really this scene is really like where it goes full horror movie for those few seconds when she jumps out and her face, kind of shrivels and she becomes
one of those things from I Am Legend that's like
bashing
its head against the glass.
The vampires.
The vamp zombies, the vombies. Vomit. In the morning, Maud is briefly seen with luminous angel wings. She wanders onto a beach and douses herself with acetone before horrified onlookers. She utters her last words in Welsh, glory to God, as she self-immolates, which means lights herself on fire, if you don't know what immolate means.
Rough.
In her last moments, the onlookers kneel in awe as Maud looks up to the sky with grace before the scene reverts to reality, revealing a burning Maud screaming in agony.
Super cool.
Amazing.
I love
Incredible.
I love endings where the lights come up and whoever you saw the movie with, you just look at them and you both just don't have anything to say.
Right.
It was just so like holy shit for like the last 5 seconds, and then it cuts to black and you're like, what the fuck do we even say about that?
But this is where, Dan, I think like it really solidifies itself as like it's much more Taxi Driver and like First Reformed. First Reformed has an almost identical ending, which is like the person is dying, but like it's the fantasy death as you're slowly going. You know what I mean? Like he drinks whatever that motor oil he's drinking with the crown of thorns on his body, and then Amanda Seyfried comes in and he's like, "Oh my gosh, you're here!" And they like fall in love, but you're like, he's super dead.
Well, the Taxi Driver ending, it's up for debate whether or not that's all in his head.
After he shoots everybody.
Yeah. So it's similar to that, but this does
This
answer your
makes
questions.
it very plain that like, nah, she lived
was
a
not a
life
saint.
alone and she died in pure
Yeah.
agony.
Never
And
got
then
help.
She wasn't seen by people until it was
Too late.
just too late. And I think it's interesting because some people have had the interpretation that that's Maud burning in hell.
Oh boy.
Right? Like
That
that
could
last
be-
moment.
could go
And
either way.
Rose Glass has always been like, oh, sure, but like that's not what I intended. But that is, that's pretty valid.
I mean, once your creation is
author's
out
dead.
there, it belongs to the audience. Well, once you create something, I mean, any real interpretation from an audience member is pretty much just as valid as the creator's intent, because now it belongs to the audience and it lives on with you.
Correct. Yeah.
The creator has it's left them like a child leaving the nest.
Zach, did Rose Glass give any insight on that ending as to what it is? Was she like, oh, this is straightforward, or was she like, oh, this means this?
Yeah, she in her vision, that is just Maud burning. That is everything you have seen before that point is from Maud's point of view. She's in every scene, so everything is through her eyes.
That's true.
And then that final scene when it cuts like that is reality, and it's this person that was suffering and didn't get the help that she needed and wasn't seen until it was too late. So yeah, she's very plain about what that ending is to her. And then everything after that, the different interpretations of Maud burning in hell, like that's just she's excited that people have had those thoughts, but that's not what she intended for the movie. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So that's the end of the movie, right? So we can kind of get into.
Should we give a rating and then move on?
Because we do have a specific rating scale for the second movies that we do.
Yeah.
But this is different. I mean, like we can do like stars.
Can we do like 5 burning mods?
I give it 27 burning mods out of 34.
Yeah, I mean it's and finality. I think that this is definitely worth watching if y'all are into. I think I would put it under the umbrella of psychological horror. It's very much in the same way
a little
that,
body horror too.
Yeah, in the same way that Hereditary is about grief and mental illness, this is very much in that vein. And if you like that movie, you'll probably like this one. This one is actually less like scary than Hereditary.
I'd say so.
It's also shorter, so you can pop it on in an afternoon and then still have time to watch. I don't know, SpongeBob.
A good
Same
Easter watch.
distributor that puts out overpriced merch.
Yeah, which
Dan
is wearing a St. Maud shirt.
I hope A24 never listens to this podcast. But I'm gonna ask. Is A24 a company that makes movies, or do they make T-shirts mostly in movies on the side? Is a major question I have.
And sweaters that go for $85 that literally just say A24.
Look,
just spelled out.
Some of my favorite movies are A24 movies, but this is a question I have generally. Maybe someone will answer it for me.
Well, you know what though? But I'm actually curious. Is Rose Glass like what? Like how many female directors has A24 picked up?
Gerwig.
Gerwig. I was gonna say.
Oh right, Lady Bird.
Gerwig, Coppola.
Oh, for Bling Ring.
Bling Ring and On the Rocks.
Okay.
Because I'm thinking it's obviously you have Ari Aster, you have
it's a boys club.
That's a boy with a girl's name.
It's a boys club though. It's a pretty big boys club over at A24.
So it's something to think about. How how it's closer
to my mouth. Okay.
It's something to think about. How it's
sorry about that, folks. Technical difficulty.
You're good. Yeah, no, that's something that came to mind. But yeah, I mean, final thoughts. Yes, that's me. I would recommend it. I think that it's worth a watch. Zach, would you?
Yeah, I definitely would recommend it. I mean, again, I'm probably the biggest baby here about horror movies. And I was fine. Like I was tense, but I was fine. And I think it's great because it's not as scary as Hereditary, but it has, I think, for me at least, it was creepier than Midsommar. So I think it's like a nice like in the middle. I don't know. That might just be me.
Midsommar
I haven't seen
is like
Midsommar.
it's like a bit too long.
It's a line.
It's too long. Kind of snaps. There's too many scenes where nothing is happening. I actually am a fan of that movie. I've watched it a few times.
I have as well.
Even I can admit.
I have as well.
There's
what's really
stuff that
it's I think, but yeah, and listen,
it is good though.
On this show, not every pair of movies we review will make a good double feature, but as Zach just said, Hereditary and Saint Maud could be a good back-to-back for you
if you want to ruin your day,
right? Or even The Witch and Saint Maud, honestly.
I guess my final thoughts will be this, but I think
First Reformed,
also a religious horror movie. I think you could say. I think my major issue with this movie is my major issue with a lot of A24's horror movies, which is like I think when you target horror at what I think A24's predominant target audience is, which is wealthy, young, white people, the focus becomes form and less on ideas, you know what I mean? Which I think is the reason why horror exists.
Barry Jenkins said that when you pitch a movie to A24, they care more about the mood. And
exactly.
than what it's
and I think you can feel it. And I like
Waves.
And I like Waves is just all vibes. And I like a lot of A24 movies. Like I think Barry Jenkins' work is incredible and Lady Bird and all that stuff and Uncut Gems, obviously. But I think specifically in their horror department, I feel like horror is often supposed to be a Trojan horse for deeper ideas.
Right.
And I think a lot of times when A24 makes horror and when a lot of prestige studios make horror, it becomes about the form, which is often great. Like the form is great, but I wish there was a little bit more substance.
Well, I mean, you could argue that The Lighthouse is almost all form.
It's all form.
And yet I think that's arguably their best.
Of the horrors?
Arguably.
I could get behind that.
You
it's
could
hard
definitely
for me.
argue that.
It's hard for me to like that and The Witch.
It's like that, The Witch, Hereditary. I probably wouldn't
similar
put
esteem.
Midsommar in my top 5.
No, not necessarily.
They've made a bunch of horror movies.
Yeah. There's a list, and I have to refamiliarize myself with it. But
I definitely think my favorite of their horror movies is Waves.
I haven't seen it, so
that's gonna be an episode.
You'll be the tiebreaker because I actually do like that movie.
I know you like it. You don't like it. Zach hasn't seen it.
There's just one scene where he's like ripping his bedroom apart, and they're playing a Tyler the Creator song off of the Flower Boy album, and that scene kind of sucks. The rest of it is pretty good.
I don't think it's a good movie, and I love it. I have seen Waves 5 times.
I've seen it twice.
Yeah. Well, all right. So maybe we can take a look at that. But we right now are going to take a break, and we're going to come back with Black Narcissus. Wes is going to take command on that one. It's his pick for the week.
Yes.
All right.
Incredible.
Don't go nowhere.
Let's don't worry. Yep.
Don't worry.
Secondary guidance. Oh my goodness.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Media Morgue. I'm Wes. I'm going to be your mortician of choice today. And today we're going to be talking about Black Narcissus. I'm going to give you some stats on this movie. It was directed, written, and produced by Michael Powell and Emeric Pressburger. The cinematographer is Jack Cardiff. It was edited by Reginald Mills. Production design from Alfred Judge. Based on, and I'm going to get this name wrong, Rumir Gudins? I don't know. It's a 1939 novel of the same name, also called Black Narcissus. And it was released, and this is important, on May 4th, 1947 in the UK, August 13th of the same year in the USA. And it was the same year as India's independence from Britain, which is really important. We'll probably get into that later. Danny, give us a bad log line of Black Narcissus.
Listen, these nuns, they're frustrated. I might even say dangerously horny. So that's really all you need to know.
So that's what it is.
Yeah.
They are hazardously horny.
Going into this, I hadn't seen this one, but the directors, as Wes said, are Michael Powell, Emeric, Pressburger. And I kind of had a Powell and Pressburger weekend. I rewatched the Red Shoes, which I hadn't seen since high school. I know that you've seen that, Wes.
I have.
Beautiful movie. I mean, I think I like it more than this one. There's that part where it gets all impressionistic, where it's the ballet, and there's that double exposure wide shot of her dancing on the stage, and the audience kind of turns into waves crashing on the shore, and like the stage is like the shore. I mean, there's just profoundly like beautiful imagery in that, and not so much in this one, but
I think this is a little bit.
We'll get into that.
But we'll get into the visual language of the film, because I think that's the reason to watch it. So one thing we're going to be doing in the morgue, in this segment of the Media Morgue, is we'll be reading the best letterbox reviews of the movie that we're talking about. So I've handpicked 3 of the greatest letterbox reviews for Black Narcissus, and here they are. The first one, and I apologize if someone whose letterbox review I'm reading happens to find this podcast. I apologize for mispronouncing your name. It is what it is. This one is from Alf Beth Knowles, 2-star review. The British Empire's very own "You can't fire us, we quit" letter. No, wait. The British Empire's very own "It's not me, it's you" letter. Excusing the rampant exoticism and eroticism on account of something in the atmosphere that makes us everything seem exaggerated. Wish this had been a better vehicle for Ruth's lipstick. I think that's
a good one.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Not bad.
That's my favorite.
Second one. This one is Dawson Joyce's 5-star review. Unfortunately distracting brown face aside, which is how you always want to begin a review. Black Narcissus is a stunningly crafted and remarkably well-acted work of filmmaking that's the very definition of profound, from the luminous Technicolor cinematography to the absolute unbelievable tension to the rich amount of emotional intelligence on display both in the script and on camera. And the third one, in my favorite, Ellie Manny Manuel's 1-star review, which is simply "The Consequences of Horniness."
Yeah.
Right, which is
what this movie is. So let's just get into like a general conversation about this, and I think the best place to start is where Danny actually was talking about before we started recording, which is, guys, what genre is this movie?
Right,
because it ain't horror.
I don't know. I actually think
I think it falls into like the thriller grab box, right? Like thriller is kind of something
maybe the last third,
you can slap on anything, and it's like, but I was telling Wes, like, the movie is, like you said, it's the last third. The movie is like, the way it starts, you think it's going to be like a musical.
Yeah.
Like I felt like I was watching
It's very like grandiose and sweeping, and the colors. I mean, as Wes was talking about before, they shot it with tri-strip Technicolor,
yes,
which was a very limited way of shooting that Powell and Pressburger kind of pioneered.
Ooh.
They shot the Red Shoes in the same way. So it looks beautiful. I mean, the colors pop, and that's one of the main things that catches your eye. It's gorgeous cinematography. Really old use of green screen here when she's atop of the mountain, she's ringing the bell, and they kind of have a matte painting beneath her, the green screen. And you can see it kind of shifting and stuff, but I mean, it's still a really.
I in terms of genre, the reason why I consider it actually, I think this is a horror movie, and I probably have a broader definition of horror than a lot of folks because I just like horror and I want everything to be horror. But I think the way that this has influenced modern horror directors like Ari Aster and like Robert Eggers is pretty profound. And I think the last kind of the manic energy of the last third.
I'll say this.
Yeah.
That last third, when she's alone in the church and Sister Ruth is kind of like skulking about, she's hiding.
Yeah.
Those shots of like the floorboards and stuff.
Throws
when it's
the
like,
milk out the window.
Is she alone? Is she not? That kind of reminds me of Ash alone in the cabin at the end of The Evil Dead.
Yeah.
Lots of similar camera work and stuff.
I guess just for a bit of something for the listeners to attach themselves to, the premise is pretty simple, right? It takes place during the colonial occupation. Thank you, of India by Britain, and there's a bunch of Anglican nuns. I was going to say nurses who want to open up essentially like a monastery in India and a school for young women. Deborah Kerr is the main actress playing Sister Clodagh. She is joined by David Farrer as Mr. Dean, who was giving me major Clayton vibes from Tarzan or that, but I was getting a lot of I was like, oh, that's Clayton.
Lots of transatlantic bravado.
Yeah. Kathyleen Byron as Sister Ruth, who eventually kind of goes crazy, and Gene Simmons as Kanchi, who I think has no effect on the plot.
She is the unfortunate blackface in question.
Well, she's one of two, because there's also the white man dressed as the prince.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
That is the first 10 minutes of the movie, and
literally
he's playing one of the worst stereotypes I've ever seen.
In both of these movies that I've seen from them, in this he's in brownface, and the other he has like a glass eye that's extremely noticeable. He's a one-eyed actor.
Oh, okay.
They give him a glass eye, and he's like looking around with the eye that works, and the other one is the prince that's in blackface.
Okay, well that's interesting because I think he is like squinting an eye or something in this role.
So in both movies they put him in weird makeup.
I mean, it's good that they gave him a check. But we'll get into this. I'm interested in what Zack has to say, but we'll get into. This movie has often been called a critique of colonialism. I don't know if that's possible with what they're doing in the movie, but Zack, go ahead. What were your thoughts on the movie? And what genre do you think it is?
I was thinking, it was kind of tough. I thought something around like psychological drama, and obviously it's like kind of hailed as like one of the first like erotic movies. And which is like, I wouldn't, like, yes, but also, you're watching it and like, there's that moment where they like touch hands and I'm like, ooh, careful.
It's pretty anti-sexuality in a way. I mean, when the one nun becomes extremely horny, she's like a monster.
Yeah, no, she's suddenly
she's doing that Kubrick glare where she's like staring at the camera through her eyebrows. They light her in a way where she looks like Pazuzu from The Exorcist.
I'm sorry.
Sexuality is scary.
Zack, go ahead.
Yeah, no, so that's kind of because I think I read that before I started the movie, so I was like, oh, here we go. This is going to be a real like sexy movie. And when was it made again? It was
1947.
47.
So yeah. So that seems apt for
the time.
For
you got to imagine the censorship board was like, now wait a minute.
Well, here's the wild thing about this is the censorship board in America was more stringent than the censorship board in England and made them cut all of the scenes out, the flashback scenes out, because they were like, it's too blasphemous for a nun to be sexy. So they cut all the flashback scenes
even though it's literally giving context for why she became a nun.
Yeah.
Like it's just the story.
They were like, it's blasphemy. She can't.
It's just the story.
There's a great moment where they kind of cross dissolve from her memory to the present, and it's like a diegetic like in camera transition where like they have the actors facing in the same position in both. It's like a beautiful cross dissolve.
It's like a De Palma shot.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
I'm actually very, very interested in what we're talking about, which is what we've landed on, I guess, as the thing of the movie, which is how horny the movie is. But I think actually the way it does desire and what desire means for this movie, especially in this context, I think is the connective tissue to Saint Maud, right? Like, so I think Saint Maud is the story of a saint surrounded by sinners, and this is about saints in like the most sinful place, quote unquote, that they can be, which is the problematic thing, because the sinful place they're in
They call them savages.
It's India. It's just a
The
place they
Himalayas
colonize.
specifically. Yeah.
You know?
A place they're choosing to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
To civilize the people. So a lot of critics have called this movie an anti-imperialist movie, and I don't know what you guys think about that.
I definitely feel like that was not the intention.
Yeah.
Because it seems to... Sorry, my mic was away from my face. It definitely seems to make it seem like they're living in harmony, and the nuns mean well, and they're meaning to educate these people and, you know, have them take in Christianity because they see them as pagan savages.
Right.
But the nuns are, like, not even subtly... They're, like, outwardly racist. So I don't... Because the movie has brownface, so I don't know if it's trying to, you know... like acknowledge that like the nuns are problematic or anything.
Right.
I think that would only be something we would take away watching this movie in 2021.
Yeah, I can't imagine coming into the theater in the Nickelodeon in 1947 and being like, wow, that taught me a lot about like what it means to like what imperialism is. I mean, like the movie, like that first Letterboxd review said, right? It seems more, if anything, like a wistful sort of looking back on the bygone era, of imperialism that was ruined by like because I guess Ruth was overcome by like the savagery of the environment. I don't know.
It's very strange. It's the thing that makes me not believe that was the intention, other than obviously it wasn't the intention of the filmmakers, is the year it comes out. So it comes out the year that India gains independence, which means decades leading up to the film, Britain is weakening as an empire.
Right.
And is probably, the way America is now in certain senses, feeling wistful and is self-mythologizing about how great they were as they're losing... You know what I mean? Like, it's the reason why we were just talking about it. It's the reason why Green Book won the Oscar is because, in a lot of ways, Hollywood is seeing itself begin to turn into something else. And they're like, hold on. Remember those days?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, the movie is really like a collection of moments but there is a plot, but it's like, it's not anything. It's very character-based. I think like more... Yeah. I wouldn't say more so than Maud, because Maud is very much a character study. It's about one person. Study. But like, there's not a lot of plot that we need to really go through heavily. The nuns get there. There's a bunch of kind of different, distinct ones, and like their sister Bryony, who's kind of like the enforcer. She's like one of the older.
The older one.
Yeah, not the really old one, but the one who when they have that sick child, she's like taking his temperature and everything. There's this character of Dean, Mr. Dean, who I guess is like he's like the military
dashing rugged rogue.
Yeah, like overseer.
All Bunyan.
Yeah, he's like the overseer of the Himalayan natives. Yeah. And I mean, we're supposed to believe that like Ruth is like in love with him and that he's in love with Clodagh. And then that's why, and then Ruth gets jealous, and then that's why she kind of unleashes at the end.
Yeah. Well, it's.
I'm like, why would you love this man? He's extremely condescending to everyone for the whole movie.
But he's England.
Yeah.
But he is England. Like, that's the point.
But he is England.
Right. You know what I mean? Like, you're supposed to be like, wow, what a handsome guy in his booty shorts walking through this nunnery.
I think that is what it is. They're not particularly attracted to him. It's just he's another like white guy who's there like doing work around the nunnery.
Yeah.
I agree. I wanted to get quickly into character stuff, and then I wanted to get into some of the categories that we're going to run through with this movie. In terms of characters, so we have three characters that are at the core. We have the two nuns, and then we have strapping British man. And then we have these kind of satellite characters that are serving the plot, but are more or less just there to push the story, whatever that story is, along. And two of those characters are, so you have the general's nephew, who's the only Indian actor, I believe, who's actually played by a South Asian actor.
Is that true?
I believe.
Well,
I think
the
there's
extras,
extras.
and that's why they can be ethnically accurate because they don't contribute to the story. So it's like for scenery as a backdrop, we'll make it authentic. But when we need people to talk, like we just can't get over that accent, I guess, or whatever it is. Even though the general's nephew clearly is, and it's just weird. Like for example, with Kenshi, one of the big points about her is her beauty. And it's like, y'all know, like, actual South Asian women are beautiful, right? Like, you didn't need to darken a white woman up to make that point.
So she's the harlot character with the green eyes?
Yes.
Does she have green eyes? She's the one that's, like, the rebellious. Yes. Dean's like, you have to watch out for her. You
have to watch out.
Have sex with you. She'll try and fuck you.
But this is, I think, also unintentionally, this movie is, like, this lineup that we've picked is very unintentionally, like, useful for the time. It's Holy Week, and we picked 2 movies about
this.
faith.
Comes out on Good Friday, so
praise God. But also this idea of like how they're eroticizing these Asian women in this movie. Like the only Asian quote unquote character in the movie who's a woman doesn't have any lines.
She doesn't speak.
She doesn't speak. No. And
she doesn't speak once, right?
No, she doesn't. And she's just a sexy 17-year-old. And it's like, she's 17. Like,
did they say she's 17?
Yeah, that's the first thing they say. And they're like,
barely remember because I watched it so late last night. The memory of this movie is so fleeting that you could tap me on the forehead and it would fucking fall out the back of my skull. You'd have to find another white boy to talk about 60s movies with, for these movies with, which is, I know, a fate worse than death. A cruel fate.
We have to really look hard. We have to find one.
So hard to come by. It was so funny. Could
but
tap me on the forehead, and the movie would pop out of the back of my skull.
She literally has no lines, and the first thing they say is she's like standing away in like a far away wide shot, and they're like, "That 17-year-old's real sexy. We gotta get a hold on her."
They're always putting her in sexy little positions. She's like crawling on the floor at one point. She's like under
like
a
an
table.
animal. Yeah. What are you doing? I actually do have like I couldn't figure out how to phrase it in time to write it on the document, but I do have like a general question about these 2 movies in conjunction. Yeah. Which is that, and again, like I said in the first part, like sometimes we'll pick 2 movies that are maybe thematically related. Sometimes we won't. You'll find out next week's pick at the end. But when looking at these 2 movies, I'm wondering like what are these 2 movies saying about women who have faith? You know, like religious women, and like,
and we are the perfect guys to talk
right
about that.
But like why women are drawn to faith. You know, and it's because like obviously with Maud, there's this need for companionship that she has in every sense, platonic, romantic, sexual, all that. With the nuns, there isn't really the religion is really just scenery. Like you don't necessarily get a sense for any of their personal relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, they touch on that with the sister Cloud.
She turns to religion because
right. They didn't she say to.
She's heartbroken, and that's why she becomes a nun. Isn't that right?
Oh my God! I'm sorry for everyone listening. That was my 13-year-old cousin. It's over now. I'm gonna text him really quick as I speak about this. But I'm pretty sure that Sister, as I type on my phone, Sister Clouda, she does say that it was something with the man that she grew up with, right? The boy that she grew up with, and she thought she was going to marry him, but he had different ambitions. He went to America.
Yeah.
He didn't take her, and then that drove her to pursue.
So it
faith,
is
right?
it's a similar thing. This and you know obviously like the sort of the patriarchal setup of Christianity that you know positions God very often as this surrogate father,
as dad.
Yeah. You know, dad and or lover. So
Optimus Prime.
Well, I got my heart broken, but I came to the Church of Optimus Prime, and every for communion we break Allspark and wash it down. There's just a giant Optimus Prime statue.
We went straight to blasphemy.
Yeah, we did.
We didn't stop. We went straight
right into it. But yeah, I just brought that up because I think that is one of the things that unifies these 2 movies. Obviously, you have women finding faith, but the primary women specifically as a result of a relationship that they lost, or that isn't there to begin with. So yeah, sorry. Back to your
No,
outline.
That's an easier connecting thread, though. Moving forward, it's going to be harder to connect.
Depending on what
I'll find something. No, but I agree with you, Justin. I think the major connecting tissue is that these are both about. I think in the case of Saint Maud, it's a singular journey, but I think in the case of Black Narcissus, it becomes almost a love triangle. But it's about these people who have given themselves over to Christian faith, in this case, and they hate and they love the object of their desire. You know what I mean? Like they both hate and they're also grappling with the feeling that like this person. Like I think you could read Saint Maud in a way where it's queer desire. You know what I mean? Like I think that is on the table, at least in a reading of the film. And I think in both Saint Maud and Black Narcissus, you have characters who are women who have come this far in their faith, and they see this person who's on the outside of it, and they hate and love that person. You know what I mean? On the other end of it, and I think that's an interesting thing. And they both deal with religious crises and what that does psychologically to you. They're both really interested in that. So I think you're onto something, Justin. Cool. So I think we'll be able to talk even more about this as we get into our categories. So the first category we have is aged the best. So we're just going to call out things we think have aged the best in this movie. This movie came out 74 years ago.
Good God Almighty!
So the list is short. But I'm sure we can find some things.
Yeah. Like
this is unironic.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, it could be ironic if you really want.
That last third feels much more modern than the rest of the film.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, when it gets into, like I said, her alone in the church and Sister Ruth is like skulking about, that feels almost like a modern horror film. The suspense that would be built in the scene. Like
I agree with that.
The rest of it is very very much a product of its time. Yeah.
It's very
Sound of Music. Yeah, I would say that, like you have on the document, it looks great. Its visuals have, I think, for the most part, hold up. I think even with the matte painting, like it's well enough conceived that like even if you are able to look at it long enough and see, oh, that's a painting, you're not like taken out of it. Yeah, and it's in the same way that like Star Wars had matte paintings behind, or back projections, stuff like that.
What's that fantasy movie with David Bowie? Some of the matte
Boy who fell to
No.
Labyrinth?
That's Labyrinth. Yeah.
The one dance, magic dance.
Yeah. The matte paintings in this reminded me of a lot of the set design in that.
Yeah. So that looks good. I think I don't know. It can be really tough to talk about performances in movies pre like 1970.
Pre Brando.
Yes,
And Brando hasn't hit yet.
Yeah, because everything was so like stagey and calculated and like by the numbers. Like there was a certain way that people had to act.
It's extremely theatrical.
Yeah.
Well, I will say though, I was pretty impressed with. I did like the. I didn't. Yeah, I agree with you in talking about performances. There's like a certain feel to movies like in those days that just like it all kind of feels the same. But Sister Clouda, I just noticed with her a lot of times like there are these like micro expressions that she has where it just feels like she's giving a look, and I felt like there was a lot of thought behind it. Like. Even if it's minute, just like her wrestling with like her attraction to someone or to Dean, right? Is that his name? The strapping British fellow.
Yes.
Barrel chested. Like wrestling. Yeah, like her attraction and her abhorrence towards him. I did see that, because they have a lot of close-ups on her, and it's not easy, to just like be subtle with that.
It's a little bit of that enemies to lovers trope.
Oh yeah.
For like, the whole, we hate each other and we're arguing the whole movie, but it's because we actually like want to get down and dirty, you know what I mean? It's that suppressed sexual tension. Yeah, which like works sometimes. Other times it makes no sense. Like sometimes if you go too far with the enemy thing, then it's like, no, these people just don't like each other.
Yeah. There's no tension.
They would never get together, and if they did, they'd immediately regret it. Sort of like a lot of people have been talking about. This is totally different, but Sam and Freddie and iCarly.
Oh wow.
SETI?
I was not expecting this turn.
I wasn't expecting it back then either.
I thought you were going to say something very profound, and you're like
Nickelodeon's classic 7-season live-action sitcom, iCarly. I think it was 7 seasons.
It feels like
that
it.
is classic.
It feels like it's still on TV right now.
Low-key.
Yeah.
Well, they show reruns all the time. The last time I had Nickelodeon on, it was just iCarly.
What else do you guys think aged well?
What else has aged well?
I can't remember what
That scene with where she's making the rounds and then the light goes out under Sister Ruth's door and just walking in, like that was genuinely
There's amazing
scary.
lighting in that whole swath of the film. I mean, there's that part where light is coming through. What's that church structure where it's like hexagon shapes? You know,
stained glass.
It's not stained glass. It's like a wooden thing, but the light is coming through it and illuminating them. And then the other woman shows. She's like a legendary character actor in Britain. I forget her name. She shows up with the lantern, and it kind of
the old woman that's like the groundskeeper
with the very few teeth.
Yes. That was also like
great
an interesting performance. I was the most interested in the wise man. I guess he was the general. The guy who was just sitting there and like...
the general's brother or his dad or something.
Yeah, like sitting there.
The Holy Man?
Yes, the Holy Man, thank you.
It's like the general's uncle or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was cool. I thought it would come to something by the end of the movie. Didn't.
He's just there.
Well, maybe it's to say that this human drama that they have, the longing and the horniness, what have you, is like kind of beneath him. Like this, I mean, they're talking about... Sister Ruth has like escaped and she goes to ask him and the young boy says that would be like minuscule to him. That would be very small to the things he's observing nature and he's observing the way that the world is changing.
And in a way, what I also like about the movie is like I didn't remember to keep track of if this actually keeps up in the movie the whole time, but like remember early on when I think it's Dean who comes in and says there's a boy who's fallen ill and they're going to drum until he's healed. And if they stop drumming, it's because he died. Mm-hmm. And there is a scene later in the movie when Ruth is in Dean's house that you can hear drumming in the background.
Interesting.
And it's cool that like, at the very least, the world of the Himalayas is not bound to what these white people are doing. Mm-hmm. Like it's happening in on its own. And like, that's kind of what the Holy Man, again, also represents is like, no, I don't need to be, I don't have to, I don't have to move according to what you guys think is appropriate for me to do.
I also think that I kept expecting the Holy Man to do something, even though I'd seen this movie before. I was like, there has to be a payoff to that, right? And there's not. But they do have that scene where Sister Clouta is with whatever the British guy's name is, Chris Pine, whatever.
He would be Chris Pine, wouldn't he?
And she's like, he's on our property, move him.
Right.
And he's like, are you
out of your mind?
Out of your mind. and, like, I think in moments like that, the movie is attempting some kind of larger idea or larger critique.
Sure.
But the critique is undercut by all the brownface and by the scenes where they literally block the white people to be a foot above the brown people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where like the brown people are around them like they're children.
Yeah, where she's standing on that podium and kind of holding the water above them. They're all like reaching up trying to grab it.
Yeah. And I would say maybe the only I don't need him to speak. I think the only payoff I wanted is like another character moment between him and someone else. I'm wondering, I don't remember, do you see him at the end when they're all riding out of the town?
No, you see
the village? Because it would have been cool to see him like observing them.
Are you talking about Dean or the Holy Man?
No,
I'm saying, do you see the Holy Man at the end of the movie?
Yeah. You see the white guy looking wistfully at his
at his former kingdom.
In the rain. The rain pours down his jaw.
I do though like the visual of the fog rising to block the memory. That was cool,
really good
visual closure.
I think the last thing I'll say aged the best is that Christmas scene where he just shows up loaded.
He falls right into that harmony. You can tell he was raised in church because he falls right into that Christmas harmony.
Does he knock over a stool for no reason upon entering?
He like kicks the door open and comes in cussing at people. Like
and the general is like, my man, like you're embarrassing me. Like, what are you doing? These are my teachers.
He is belligerent, and then they give him like a little hymn sheet,
and then the Himmel.
Yeah.
And speaking of the general, though, let's talk about his role, because the movie is actually, the story is named after his
the cologne. The cologne.
Right.
Right.
What do you want?
And they say Black Narcissus is fitting for him because he's so vain, and then one of the sisters says, "Well, he's not black," and then another sister says, "Well, they all look the same to me."
Right.
Oh yeah.
So here's the thing. I actually made a note because when the whole movie, I'm like, this movie has such a like dark title that I'm waiting for the turn. I'm waiting for like when they go down the stairs in Parasite, and when he says like, "Oh, it's the name of my cologne," I was like, this won't bode well. Not that the movie won't be good, but that like usually when there's a small detail like that, that's the title of the movie. I feel like it means like there's some deep like trauma that's going to happen by the end, which isn't necessarily kind of the case. I mean, the woman dies, Sister Ruth.
Right.
She gets yeeted right off that
off the bell tower.
At the bell tower.
Assassination attempt.
The rule of three, though, the movie really does follow the rule of filmic three, where you see something 3 times and on the third time something happens.
Right.
Good for them.
Yeah.
Because the third time she goes to ring the bell is when they have that fight.
But am I incorrect, or isn't Ruth the one who has been ringing the bell up to that point?
She has been.
Right.
And then she goes up
now it's
to kick her boss off the thing, and it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
So with that said, let's move into Age the Worst.
Well, the brown face. The brown face. For
the
sure.
brown face is number one.
I think we're in agreement.
Yeah, it's tough.
Maybe sexuality as like this thing that ends up driving you insane and killing.
Right, sexuality because it's one thing if you want your movie to genuinely sell like celibacy as a spiritual experience and practice, that's one thing. But if it's like, no, having sex will make you
evil,
an insane person, then yeah, that's kind of not the most modern thing.
But I also think like it isn't just that. It's more than just the sexuality make you evil. It's that the literal quote unquote exotic location that they're in is making them sexual monsters. It's like they've touched down in India and immediately are horny.
They're not attracted to any of the people who live there. They all like kind of latch onto the one other white man that they see semi
again because he does represent the fatherland,
the West,
because we're horny for the British Empire. Any other things that have aged poorly?
I mean, like I couldn't actually tell whether or not that groundskeeper was supposed to be an Asian woman, or if she was just like, a white woman who like got there a few decades before everyone else and
also went crazy,
knew the lay of the land. Yeah, like, but I mean, I think it's just anytime that you're shooting a movie, I don't know if this is on location. They probably just built most of the
sets. There's actually a lot of miniatures. It's got a lot of old school practical.
Yeah, and I
effects.
think like we weren't really doing location shooting that much back in the day, probably. But if you are attempting to recreate a place, and the only reason you use people who look like they would live there is to again legitimize the aesthetic of the film, that's crappy. Because like if you're gonna cast Asian extras, then cast an Asian principal, and it's not even like the characters who would be Asian are that big of a role. The only one, I mean, it's weird that like
don't we only see that king one time?
Yeah, it's weird that the prince or whatever or king is in brownface and he's on screen for 2 minutes, and then the general who comes in the second act is an actual Asian actor. You would think if they were going to do anything, they'd swap that.
And the guy at the beginning is just not just in brownface, but he's like doing a horrible like stereotype.
No, he's up. He's doing
like
it's really hard to watch.
It's very bad, and I think sometimes when we watch old movies, we made the joke like brownface aside, but I actually think it's actually really dangerous. Like I think especially if you're talking about the 40s, you see something like this in a time where India is attempting to become an independent state. And this is like really dangerous propaganda. Like this is like propaganda that could cause violence towards Indian people living in the British Empire at the time.
And even contextualizing the film, it's not even about how they're occupying and taking advantage of its economy and people. It's that that's in the background of this little like love triangle thing
Right.
that's going on. You know, the film is so not interested in its climate.
Right.
It's not. It's like in my notes I wrote it reminds me a lot of the Wes Anderson movie Darjeeling Unlimited, and then also Lost in Translation, the Coppola movie. And those are two like filmmakers that I think are like skilled, but I think the idea of using a location as a backdrop for white characters to discover themselves, which is like not great, and also is something we keep doing.
In a weird way, it's related to, but not the same as the white savior trope, right? Where like,
it is. It's the same thing.
But I think it's like the white savior being injected into a place and then like solving all of its problems versus the place solving the white person's problems. Yeah, it's slightly different.
In this film, can you say that either of those things happen? Because one of my biggest issues is that they're really unconcerned with like the natives and the actual land. Like it's all about their.
You would almost think to that degree that like that they'd be fighting over the prince. Why do they even introduce him if no one's attracted to him?
Oh, that the 17-year-old is attracted to him.
Yeah, but do they get married?
They look at each other.
They run away, right?
Yeah, they run away together.
Oh, is that true?
After a meaningful hug, they are never seen again.
I must have blinked and missed it.
He's like, everybody here is a child except for you, who's also a child, but not
a child.
But it means something that we didn't pick it up. That some of you guys didn't.
No,
pick it
for
up.
sure.
I don't even remember that.
For sure.
It's not good.
Do you have more categories for us?
I do. I have one more. So this one is, I don't know if we'll keep doing this one, but I think it's a fun little exercise. Would you remake it? And what would your team be, your production team? So we're talking about director and lead actors and writer, if you really can think of one. Real fast, though, this was remade by FX in a 3-part miniseries last year.
Last year?
Yep.
Starring Diana Riggs and Gemma Arterton.
Yeah. I had a big thing for Gemma Arterton after Clash of the Titans.
Wow.
That was
Wow. Okay.
Because I was just gonna say no, I would never remake it.
I think maybe in addition to this is a good time as we're wrapping up for me to introduce our ratings. So when we're in the morgue, and maybe that's what we'll call this segment, we're figuring it out.
The morgue.
But when we're in the morgue, capital I, we do have ratings for the movies that we dig up out of obscurity. So I'm going to go I'm going to go down from best to worst, and we have 5 of these. So the highest is Immortal. This is our highest ranking. It means that the chosen film can't be killed and will always have something intriguing or entertaining to mine. It's an instant recommendation from the person who gives it. We have Reanimated, which is the second highest. It indicates that the chosen film was underrated and deserves to be recirculated into general discourse. This ranking also constitutes an enthused recommendation from the person who gives it. Right in the middle, we have Embalm It, sort of a mid-road ranking, which indicates that a film might be a product of its time, and it's lost some relevance that would make it worth repopularizing, but it could still be worth watching for a specific reason. Top of the worst, we have Bury It. The film's time is completely past, and it's better left dead. Only recommended to the curious, but has nothing of note left to say, or that hasn't been said better. And finally, we have Cremated.
Oh boy.
Nothing of value intellectually or artistically, and minimal to no entertainment value. Hard non-recommend from the person who gives it. So what we can do is, if you want to talk about remaking it, I guess it could coincide with one of these ratings, or it could be completely different. I would, so like, well, what do y'all?
No, go ahead.
I mean, I wouldn't remake it, but but for the sake of the bit, is it like if you had to remake it?
Yeah,
choose your studio.
So let's
instead?
say Warner Brothers comes to you and says, "Danny, we bought the rights to Black Narcissus. We need you to remake it."
Who directed the Portrait of a Lady on Fire? Who's that French director?
Selena Sciamma.
Is that her name?
Celine Sciamma. Yeah.
Yeah, that's who I would choose.
It should be a
probably
woman, right?
have Neon as the production company. I mean, it would need a woman's touch in the modern age, you know.
Yeah, agreed.
Who would you have starring it? Do you have an actress in mind?
I don't even know. In the lead role, maybe Tilda Swinton as a sister starts with a C. What's her name?
Cloutis.
Yeah.
I get one of the Fanning sisters in here. I think if you remake it, like where have they been for? Dakota was kind of on top of the world,
And
You talking about Elle Fanning?
And then Elle was on top of the world for a second.
Relax.
Danny, why? Not Danny. Zach, why doesn't Elle Fanning wear shoes to the airport?
Does she do that?
She
Is this
doesn't.
like a knock-knock joke?
She walks barefoot
Oh, okay.
through the airport. We can
That
cut this.
upset me
We could cut.
profoundly.
No, I
She's probably one of those people who thinks that shoes are like shoes are like government like tracking device. There's this like conspiracy that like shoes. It's like one of those
How the government
wackier
finds you.
conspiracies.
Yeah, I'm gonna say well, actually, now that you've done the bit, what would you rank it?
And bomb this fucking thing. I mean, there are like it is still like visually pretty nice, and I like the way these old Powell Pressburger movies look. But I mean, the brown face and the weird
tough.
sexual stuff going on, the weird sexual commentary.
Yeah,
that is not very sex positive. I mean, it's definitely dated.
yeah, understood. Zach,
Yeah, what am I doing? Am I doing the rating
both.
or am I?
How would you remake it and then rate it?
If you would remake it.
If you would.
You can
If
say
I
no.
would, I probably would not. But I get. I mean, if I was going to, just for the sake of the game, I guess you could probably throw. I mean, you could throw in what's her name, Saoirse Ronan. Is that?
Saoirse.
That's my
Saoirse Ronan. I didn't say
darling.
it at all correctly. If you're listening to this, I'm sorry.
Saoirse, come on the show.
I feel like I could just see her in this, and it's probably because I might have seen her in something similar in concept. I don't know. I could just see her doing.
You're talking about like Mary Queen of Scots.
Yeah, something like that. And I think she's in a new one with
Yes.
Oh my God,
Ammonite.
Kate Winslet, right?
Ammonite.
Yeah, that right. So that's probably where that's coming from. But I honestly don't think I'd remake it. But in terms of rating, I would also say embalm it. Because there are definitely some cool things in here, but a lot of dated things. But the thing is with this rating system, you could also go the route of like you can learn from its mistakes,
Sure.
right? So you can really spin it in
But
any
that's
way.
why we pick it apart.
I guess
Listen,
that's why I'm morbidly curious about this miniseries remake that you guys were.
It's a
talking about.
3-parter if you want to just.
What
binge
was it
the whole
on?
thing.
FX.
That's FX.
FX, yeah.
Siri, who?
No, Siri, I'm not. I didn't summon you.
Siri wants to be on
It's
the
an
podcast.
FX 3-part.
I would like to see what they did with it.
Curious.
Wes, how would you remake it? And
I probably wouldn't remake it. If there was a gun to my head to remake it, I think I would have Quentin Tarantino direct. No, I think,
dude, in the last act, the nun pulls out like a Beretta.
No, I think this is a tough one, and I think it's a relic. Like, I think even the nun stuff has been done better with Sound of Music, which came out 18 years later, which is like crazy to think about.
Yeah.
That Sound of Music, which has been around for 50 years, was like the new movie on the block compared to this one.
Right.
So I think the nun stuff has all been adopted better. The Technicolor stuff is done better in that movie. And I just think for like exotic locations for these kinds of stories have gone out of style. But for the game that I've created, I would also go with Saoirse Ronan. She's great. You'd have to do some kind of spin on it. Like you'd have to make it about the 17-year-old who shows up to the nunnery, make it built around her, built around the prince. Yeah. No, Tilda works. Tilda works.
But isn't part of the point of it is Sister Clouda is like too young, or like she is younger to become a Sister Superior? Isn't that what
she's inexperienced?
So.
She's
I think
inexperienced.
so. Yes, which is part of why like the part of why the superior who dispatches her is like telling her like who to get friendly with.
Yeah, and she's like, I think you're gonna fail, but go for it anyway. See that.
Have a good time.
It's like what she says.
And you would rate it.
I would give it I'm gonna go harsher than you guys. I would give it Bury It. And this is the movie that I put it in the docket.
Yeah, that's what surprises me about this. I thought you liked this movie because it was your choice.
So
maybe he thought he liked it too.
I did think I liked this movie. It's a very pretty movie. One of my friends in film school, Danielle, rewatched the movie before I did, and was like, "Just so you know, there's an article about this, and there's a lot of imperialism in here. I don't know if you knew that. And I was like, yeah, of course. I mean, but I was actually floored by how much it's in here, and I think everything that's in here has been done better somewhere else. I think the only thing here is the shooting style, which feels very modern.
Yes.
But like otherwise, I'm like, we don't need it. We're good. Justin, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. To close out the quad here, I was watching it thinking of Paul Thomas Anderson.
Wow.
Okay.
That's an inspired pick.
And I feel like if he did this, it would be a lot more like character. You'd have a lot more clarity about different characters, and you'd also, I mean, obviously, like the shooting style would be there.
Yeah, he would want to go on location.
Yeah, and if you cast like Daniel Day-Lewis as Dean, like, because of course,
not Chris.
He's
Pine.
really showing up drunk to
yeah.
and,
Danny and I have it'll make its appearance on this show at some point, but we had a whole running joke about like Daniel Day-Lewis playing like superhuman characters and what he would do to get into character.
going full method.
Yeah, like playing the Punisher and like actually becoming a mass murderer.
That's a horrible idea, yeah.
But yeah, I would say like PTA. I was also kind of, maybe this is just because the farewell is fresh in my mind. Lulu Wang, maybe. And
Lulu Wang might eat that.
If you do it like with just actual Asian people.
That's something I hadn't even considered. Yeah, I mean,
and maybe displace it from the Himalayas to another Asian country. But I would say I'm kind of between Embalm and Barry, but I'm going to go Embalm strictly because of how dope that last act is.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
And how the horror looks in that. I think that's worth examining, if nothing else.
The movie feels like completely different once it gets there. I was like surprised because I was like almost falling asleep like prior to that.
yeah.
Like, what did Wes make me watch this movie?
Yeah, but I mean that closes our thoughts on Black Narcissus. Danny, go ahead and let them know what your pick is for next week.
So my pick for next week is the punk classic Repo Man by Alex Cox. It is I guess as far as genre goes, approach this one as a punk stoner comedy. And I think you won't be disappointed. It's got elements of surrealism. What'd you say?
What's it playing in rep with? What's the thing it's in rep with?
I think we're watching
the popular movie will
Godzilla
most likely be
next week.
Godzilla versus Kong.
Yeah.
And
perfect.
It's going to be hard to find a connecting tissue.
yeah, but we'll
between those
also
two.
use that as an opportunity.
Right.
We'll use this
I think
as an
you're gonna
opportunity
find something with
to
Kong in there.
Right.
So-
Yeah, we'll use it as an opportunity to discuss other kaiju films. But yeah, that is going to be a wrap on our series premiere,
Fuck
guys.
yeah!
I'm
That
really,
was- wow.
really.
This podcast thing is easy.
Hey, man, I'm really happy to be among such esteemed company. We will be doing weekly episodes for our first month and then potentially switching up the schedule afterwards. So keep in tune for next week. Check out the movies if you can. Rate and review the show wherever you get it. We'll be on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, all the places. and also follow our Instagram at the Media Morgue and Twitter at the Media Morgue. And we're going to be setting up a Facebook page too. Also, we have a Patreon, which we will be setting up tiers for. But if you just want to give us some money because we're funny and handsome, feel free to do so.
Hey.
Sweet, fun, silly boys.
And let us know whose voice you like the most. Not that it matters, but
But it does.
Well, I haven't been talking in my sexy voice, so.
listen, guys, keep watching movies.
Unless you don't want to.
Yeah.
In that case, fuck movies. Movies aren't for everyone.